Imagine a time when the nearest grocery store was 100 miles of untamed wilderness, and your next meal depended entirely on your wits, your skill, and the bounty of nature. This was the reality for the frontiersmen who pushed the boundaries of civilization in early America. While we often romanticize the image of the hunter with their rifle, an equally vital yet far less celebrated skill kept them alive: fishing. But forget your modern rods and reels. These pioneers practiced methods born of ingenuity, desperation, and an intimate knowledge of the land and its creatures. Today, we're casting our net wide to uncover 7 forgotten fishing techniques that were truly the difference between survival and starvation on the frontier. 1. Noodling, the ultimate hand-to-fin combat. Our first forgotten technique is arguably the most primal, certainly the most daring, and perhaps the most intimidating. Noodling, often known simply as hand fishing. Imagine a frontiersman standing knee-deep or waist-deep in the often murky, warm waters of a slow-moving river or a still pond. There's no rod, no reel, no net, and not even a simple hook. Their only tools are their hands, their courage, and an intimate understanding of where fish hide. The objective? To locate and capture large, bottom-dwelling fish, primarily catfish but occasionally carp or other substantial species, using nothing but bare hands. These weren't small panfish. We're talking about powerful, often aggressive creatures that could weigh dozens of pounds. The technique involved a deep breath, a plunge of the arms into the dark, unseen depths, and a tactile search along submerged logs, under tangled root systems, inside rocky crevices, or beneath undercut riverbanks. These were the natural hiding spots for these fish, their aquatic lairs. Once a fish was located, often by feeling its rough skin or the subtle movement of water around it, the true test began. The noodler would typically feel for the fish's gaping mouth. Then, with a sudden, audacious move, they would often thrust their thumb directly into the fish's maw, using it as a leverage point. At that moment, it transformed into an intense, hand-to-fin wrestling match. The fish, powerful and disoriented, would thrash violently, trying to escape, its strong tail beating against the water. The frontiersmen, equally determined, would grip firmly, their fingers often slipping into the fish's gills for a better hold, and with a burst of strength, wrestle the protesting creature to the surface and onto the bank. This was not for the faint of heart. A misstep could lead to nasty bites, deep scratches from the fish's spines or rough skin, or even broken fingers or arms from a particularly large and desperate fish. Yet the reward was substantial. A large, protein-rich meal that required absolutely no manufactured equipment, only raw grit, strength, and a deep understanding of animal behavior. Noodling was a direct, visceral engagement with nature, a true testament to human adaptability, born out of a desperate need to secure food without the luxury of tools. It perfectly embodies the resourceful, no-holds-barred spirit of survival on the American frontier. 2. Fish weirs, engineering abundance from flowing water. Moving from the individual prowess of hand fishing to a more communal and strategically sophisticated approach, we delve into the world of fish weirs. These weren't just simple traps. They were ingenious hydrological engineering projects, representing a remarkable understanding of fish behavior and river dynamics. Often learned from, and in many cases directly adapted from, the practices of various Native American tribes who had employed them for millennia, fish weirs were a cornerstone of sustainable food gathering on the frontier. A typical fish weir involved constructing a barrier or fence across a river or stream. The most common designs were V-shaped or W-shaped, with the open end of the V, or the converging points of the W, pointing downstream. The materials used were readily available from the natural environment. Stones carefully stacked to form walls, interwoven branches and saplings driven into the riverbed to create a sturdy fence-like structure, or even large logs strategically placed. The goal was to create a funnel, subtly but effectively directing the flow of water, and more importantly, the movement of fish. The genius of the weir lay in its efficiency and understanding of fish migration. As fish traveled either upstream, perhaps for spawning purposes, or downstream as juveniles or after spawning, they would encounter the barrier. Instead of being able to continue their direct path, they would instinctively follow the barrier, eventually being guided into a narrow collection area at the point of the V or W. Here, the fish were concentrated, sometimes in astounding numbers, making them incredibly easy to harvest. Frontiersmen could then collect them using simple spears, primitive nets woven from natural fibers, or even by hand. Some weirs incorporated removable basket traps at the collection point, allowing fish to swim in but preventing their escape, creating a continuous, self-resetting trap. The beauty of the weir was its ability to capture vast quantities of fish with minimal ongoing effort once constructed. This allowed for the consistent provision of a substantial and reliable food source for entire families, small frontier settlements, or even temporary encampments. Unlike hunting, which could be unpredictable and required constant exertion, a well-maintained weir could provide a steady supply of protein, freeing up time and energy for other vital survival tasks, like building shelters, preparing hides, or cultivating crops. Fish weirs truly represent a significant step in food procurement on the frontier, showcasing a shift from individual hunting to a more systematic, sustainable, and often collaborative method of harvesting nature's bounty, demonstrating a deep respect for and knowledge of their environment. 3. Stunning fish with natural botanicals. The poison method. This next technique might initially sound alarming or even dangerous, but it was a well-established, remarkably effective, and surprisingly non-toxic method for harvesting fish. Stunning fish using natural botanicals. Frontiersmen, often guided by the extensive and profound knowledge of indigenous peoples who had practiced this for centuries, discovered that certain plants contain natural compounds that, when introduced into water, would temporarily disorient or stun fish, causing them to float to the surface where they could be easily collected. The key here is temporarily disorient. These weren't lethal poisons in the conventional sense, and crucially, they did not render the fish unsafe for human consumption once they were removed from the water. The active compounds primarily affected the fish's respiratory system, gills, or nervous system, interfering with their ability to absorb oxygen or maintain equilibrium. Among the most commonly employed plants were various species of buckeye trees, particularly the crushed seeds, nuts, or leaves of the Ohio buckeye, Aesculus glabra, and the California buckeye, Aesculus californica. These parts of the plant contain compounds called saponins and ascalin. Other plants containing saponins, such as soapwort, Saponaria officinalis, or certain parts of the walnut tree, Juglans spp, were also known to be used. The method involved crushing the plant material, often pounding the nuts or leaves, to release these compounds, then introducing the mashed pulp into a body of water. This technique was most effective in specific hydrological conditions: smaller, slower-moving bodies of water like ponds, quiet pools and rivers, or isolated eddies. In these environments, the natural compounds could concentrate sufficiently without being immediately diluted by strong currents. Within a relatively short period, fish would begin to exhibit signs of distress, swimming erratically, struggling to stay upright, and eventually floating to the surface, where they could be quickly and easily scooped up by hand, with baskets or crude nets. The beauty of this method was its efficiency. It allowed for the rapid collection of a significant number of fish without the need for hooks, lines, or nets, which might be scarce or difficult to repair on the frontier. It required intimate knowledge of local flora, knowing precisely which plants to use and how to prepare them, along with an understanding of water dynamics. This forgotten skill highlights the frontiersman's deep connection to and practical reliance on the natural world, transforming what we might perceive as poisonous plants into a vital tool for survival. 4. Spearfishing. The original hunter-gatherer's angling. Long before the widespread availability of factory-made fishing tackle, when hooks were rare and nets were laborious to weave, the spear stood as a fundamental and indispensable tool for harvesting aquatic life. Spearfishing was a direct, often exhilarating, and profoundly personal method of obtaining food, demanding a unique blend of keen eyesight, stealth, and lightning-fast reflexes. It was, in essence, the hunter-gatherer's angling. The spear itself was a testament to frontier ingenuity and resourcefulness. These were typically handcrafted, ranging from the simplest iteration, a sturdy, straight stick with a fire-hardened and sharpened tip, to more elaborate versions featuring carved bone barbs, antler points, or, if a blacksmith was accessible, even crudely forged metal tips. The design was straightforward. Create a sharp point capable of piercing a fish's body and holding it. The technique demanded more than just a well-made spear. It required profound patience and a nuanced understanding of physics. Frontiersmen would wade into shallow, clear waters, often along riverbanks, lake shores, or in calm inlets where fish might congregate. They would stand motionless, sometimes for extended periods, silently scanning the water's surface and depths. Their eyes, accustomed to spotting subtle movements in the wild, would search for the telltale shimmer or shadow of a fish. The greatest challenge, however, was water refraction. Because light bends as it passes from air into water, objects underwater appear shallower and closer than they actually are. A successful spear fisherman knew this instinctively and understood the crucial need to aim below their perceived target. A well-executed strike was a swift, powerful thrust rather than a throw, designed to impale the fish before it could react and dart away. This method was particularly effective for catching larger, slower-moving fish, or for opportunistic strikes on schools of fish passing through a narrow channel. It provided a direct, immediate source of protein and was vital in situations where other fishing methods were impractical or equipment was unavailable. Spearfishing was more than just a technique. It was a primal connection to the hunt, a direct engagement with their prey that underscored the self-reliance and intimate relationship with nature that defined much of frontier life. It stands as a timeless reminder of human adaptability and the fundamental skills that sustained existence before modern conveniences. 5. Trotlines and setlines. The passive harvest. In the relentless pursuit of survival on the frontier, where every hour was precious and physical labor was constant, efficiency was not just a luxury, it was a necessity. This drive for maximizing effort led to the widespread adoption of trotlines and setlines, ingenious methods that allowed a frontiersman to essentially fish while they worked, providing a continuous, passive harvest of fish. The core principle behind both techniques was the ability to fish without constant supervision, allowing the pioneer to dedicate their time to other crucial tasks like hunting, trapping, building shelter, gathering firewood, or cultivating a small garden. A trotline was a more ambitious setup, designed for larger bodies of water like wide rivers or expansive ponds. It consisted of a long, sturdy main line, often made from twisted animal sinew, strong plant fibers, like those from nettles or milkweed, or if available, salvaged rope. This main line would be stretched across the water, anchored securely to trees, heavy rocks, or stakes driven into the bank on either side. From this main line, numerous shorter lines called droppers would hang down into the water at regular intervals. Each dropper was equipped with a baited hook. The number of hooks could vary from a few dozen to over 100 on a very long trot line, depending on the available materials and the size of the waterway. Set lines, on the other hand, were individual, simpler versions. Each set line typically consisted of a single baited hook tied to a line, often weighted with a small stone or wrapped around a stick, and then securely tied off to a bankside branch, a sturdy piece of driftwood, or a stake driven into the ground near the water's edge. Multiple set lines would be deployed along a stretch of riverbank or around a pond. The process was remarkably straightforward and effective. Frontiersmen would typically set these lines in the evening, baiting the hooks with whatever was readily available: worms, insects, small pieces of fish, entrails from a hunted animal, or even corn kernels. Once set, the lines were left unattended overnight. While the pioneer slept or attended to other critical tasks, the baited hooks would do their work. The next morning, they would simply return to check their lines, often finding a significant and consistent catch of fish waiting for them. This hands-off approach was a game-changer for time management. It provided a steady, reliable supply of protein without requiring the constant, active engagement demanded by spearing or noodling. Trot lines and set lines were a testament to the frontiersmen's ingenuity in optimizing their efforts, turning the natural bounty of rivers and lakes into a continuous, low-maintenance food source that significantly improved their chances of survival in a harsh and unforgiving wilderness. 6. The humble gig, multi-pronged efficiency. While similar in concept to a spear, the gig offered a distinct and often crucial advantage in the frontier's quest for food. Multi-pronged efficiency. Typically featuring 2, 3, or even more sharpened tines, the gig significantly increased the chances of a successful strike compared to a single pointed spear. This made it a versatile and reliable tool, particularly effective in specific environments and for a broader range of aquatic prey. Gigs were fashioned from readily available materials. Early versions might have been crafted from sturdy tree branches, split at one end and carefully sharpened into multiple points, then fire-hardened for durability. As metal became more accessible, blacksmiths might forge iron or steel gigs with robust, barbed prongs, making them even more effective at securing a catch. The design focused on creating a wider impact area, making it easier to hit a moving target or to pin down multiple smaller creatures. This tool excelled in scenarios where a single spear might prove too difficult or inefficient. Shallow, reedy areas, often found along the edges of ponds, slow-moving streams, or marshy sections of rivers, were prime gigging grounds. In these cluttered environments, the multiple prongs increased the likelihood of piercing a fish that might otherwise evade a single point by darting between reeds or submerged vegetation. However, the gig's true legendary status often came alive at night. Frontiersmen would employ a technique known as flaming or torch gigging. They would carry a torch or lantern, holding it over the water's surface to create a bright, localized light source. The light not only illuminated the murky depths, revealing the presence of fish, but it also had a mesmerizing effect on many aquatic creatures, causing them to become temporarily disoriented and often swim towards the light or simply hold still. This made them easy targets for a swift, downward thrust of the multi-pronged gig. The gig's versatility extended beyond just fish. It was an exceptionally effective tool for harvesting other aquatic protein sources, most notably frogs, especially large bullfrogs, and even small turtles that might be lurking in the shallows. This broader applicability made the gig an invaluable addition to a frontiersman's toolkit, providing a reliable and often quick method for securing a meal, adding crucial variety and easily accessible protein to a frontier diet. Its design embodies the practical ingenuity born out of necessity, maximizing the chances of success with a relatively simple yet highly effective tool. 7. Ice fishing. Winter's lifeline. When winter's brutal grip descended upon the frontier, transforming lush landscapes into frozen expanses, the challenge of finding food intensified dramatically. Lakes and rivers solidified into vast sheets of ice, cutting off access to the abundant aquatic life that sustained pioneers during warmer months. Yet, even in these most unforgiving conditions, the resourceful frontiersmen found a way to fish. Ice fishing. This was arguably the most physically demanding and mentally rigorous technique, serving as a critical lifeline against starvation during the long, lean winter. The first, and often most arduous task, was penetrating the thick layers of ice. With no specialized power tools, frontiersmen relied on sheer brute force and persistence. They would use heavy axes, sharpened chisels, or even sturdy logs with sharpened ends to chip, hack, and pound their way through feet of solid ice. This was a slow, exhausting process, requiring immense physical exertion in sub-zero temperatures, often while battling biting winds and blowing snow. Once a hole, typically circular or rectangular, was cut, the fragmented ice had to be cleared away to keep the opening accessible. With the fishing hole open, the actual angling technique was deceptively simple, reflecting the scarcity of materials. Frontiersmen would use basic handlines, often crafted from twisted animal sinew, strong plant fibers, like those from basswood bark or nettles, or salvaged cordage if available. Their hooks were equally rudimentary, hand-carved from bone, sharpened pieces of wood, or perhaps crudely fashioned from salvaged metal scraps if a blacksmith had passed through. Lures were minimal, ranging from a plain baited hook using grubs, bits of meat, or even raw corn, to a simple piece of shiny metal or a small carved fish shape designed to attract curious fish. Patience was not just a virtue, it was a necessity. The frontiersmen would huddle by the frigid hole, often exposed to the elements, or sometimes within a makeshift windbreak of branches or snow, patiently waiting for a bite. Understanding where fish congregated under the ice, often in deeper pockets or near underwater structures, was crucial for success. Unlike open water fishing, the fish were less active, and bites could be incredibly subtle, requiring intense focus and a keen sense of touch. Ice fishing was more than just a method for securing food. It was a profound testament to the indomitable human spirit of survival. It demanded incredible resilience against the cold, unwavering determination, and an intimate knowledge of the frozen environment. It was a skill that prevented countless cases of starvation, demonstrating that even when the land seemed to offer nothing but an icy expanse, the resourceful pioneer could still draw life and sustenance from the frozen depths, ensuring their survival until the warmth of spring returned. These 7 forgotten fishing techniques paint a vivid picture of frontier life, a world where every meal was earned, and ingenuity was as vital as a sharp axe. From the raw courage of noodling to the collaborative engineering of weirs and the sheer grit of ice fishing, these methods sustained a nascent nation. They remind us that long before the conveniences of modern life, our ancestors possessed an incredible understanding of their environment and an unwavering will to survive.